Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 205 of ReelBlend, a podcast that holds a grudge and never, ever forgets.
I've already forgotten what we're talking about.
SAG has come and gone. The Batman hits theaters, and director Matt Reeves is on the show for a very exclusive and very, very fun. We're off the rails already. I am Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at Cinema Blend, joined as always. Hold on.
Wait, Sean, while you're catching yourself. No. Yeah. This is good. I want to keep this in.
Okay, keep going.
So people have to understand, we do this podcast once a week.
Yes.
And please, whoever's editing this, Jeff, leave this in. We are on a text thread all day long, and like we're sending each other jokes and bits and all this stuff like that. And then Sean will just like come out the gate with like something that we were laughing about like 2 days ago or something, and and it's so inside. But
and I do it just to get your guys' reactions to it. Really, this whole show is just for the three of us. So anyway, I'm Sean O'Connell, managing editor here at Cinema Blend, joined as always by Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hi, Kev. How are you?
Hey, Sean, how are you doing today? I was wondering, so first of all, you did gloss over this because we were laughing so hard. We have Matt Reeves on our show today.
Yes, we do. Yes.
And obviously we're all big fans, and we're going to get to that shortly. But as you know, Cloverfield to Planet of the Apes and everything, we're just excited to have him on. And if you're at all into filmmaking, we get into some really cool stuff about VR and how he was directing. It's awesome. So enjoy the interview today.
And if you're not into filmmaking, I also asked questions.
I don't know why you'd be listening to this show if you're not into filmmaking. It's basically what we talk about. That voice you heard is Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Nobody told me it was white shirt today. I didn't.
And you went to complete. Well, I mean that. I feel like it kind of goes with the theme of today, which is Kevin and I on one side and Sean on the other.
Yes, if you're friends with Ryan Reynolds, wear white.
You wear a white shirt.
And if you are not, wear the color I'm wearing. This is like a navy blue.
To give perspective, so we're recording this right after we just completed the Adam Project junket, and I'll just use this opportunity to tease that we are going to have Sean Levy on the show again next week. He was on for Free Guy. It's an excellent conversation, and the movie has Ryan Reynolds, and that'll be coming out next week. So we'll get into that next week.
We can call him friend of the show. Almost Sean Levy.
Oh, Sean's awesome, man, and like, or as I call him, Rob. But Sean is awesome.
This show really has turned into one giant inside joke. Like,
yes, yeah. Well, you'll know when you hear the interview, which is coming up very soon. Yeah. And if you're watching us on YouTube to see the wardrobe that we are sporting and these two handsome gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Please head down, give us a like and a subscribe, because we are over 6,000 subscribers and we are now climbing really, really fast. For audio listeners, if you want to join us in video form, head to youtube.com/ReelBlend podcast, ReelBlend podcast, and join the fun. Of course, we're available all the different places where you get your audio podcast needs met. And I want to know if you guys have signed up for ReelBlend Premium. If you think this show is off the rails, you can pay $5 a month for 4 more episodes of pure insanity. I forget the thing we're recording this week because we're down Gabe. Gabe is off on vacation. We're being joined by one of our really good friends, Jeff McCobb. He has terrible internet, so he might not pop in here. But Gabe has a
why doesn't Cinema Blend pay him more so that he can have better internet?
We do pay him a lot, but he has really debilitating habits that keep him spending his money on things. Yes.
His internet's so bad he can't even defend himself.
Right. Yes, exactly. He chooses to spend on other things besides internet.
And for people who are longtime listeners to our show, Jeff has had a presence on this show, whether you know it or not. Jeff is actually in the room for our Ryan Johnson ReelBlend interview for Knives Out. Jeff recorded that. So Jeff's ingrained in our show. And if you haven't listened to the Ryan Johnson interview, it's available on wherever you get your podcasts.
One time when we were in Los Angeles, Jeff was on as a guest, but I forget what we talked about, and I forget what episode it was.
He did join us,
and he came to Jeff. You came to Tarantino, right?
Yeah.
I've been around.
You've been around.
Let's just say, while I can chime in, that I love you guys. Happy to be here.
Hey, Jeff, I was just curious if you ever considered adding the word salad to your name.
Oh my God. Wow.
Jeff Salad?
Jeff
completely original.
Macabre salad. You ever had a Cobb salad?
All right. Well, I'm going to follow up that gem with this. Matt Reeves is joining the show to talk about his blockbuster film, The Batman.
Love Cobb salad.
We circled Matt as a want to get on the show guest right when his name was attached to the project. And so we want to thank the people at Warner Brothers for helping us pull this off.
Always helping us pull it off.
Yeah, they're terrific to this show. They're really, really supportive, and they got us Matt Reeves. So without further ado, Matt Reeves on the ReelBlend podcast talking about The Batman. There has always been a really interesting paradox pertaining to Batman for me, and I think this is one of the first movies to really attack it. And I wanted to get your opinion on it because I'm guaranteed that you thought about it. Whether Batman exists because Gotham has so many colorful villains, or whether the villains flock to Gotham because Batman exists.
Oh. Well, in my sort of deep dive at the beginning before I wrote, I read so many comics, and I think that the thing that stuck out to me, the vein that sort of resonated the most to me was the idea that it's the appearance of this vigilante who's masked, who gets called the Batman, that inspires the Rogues Gallery, because of, they're kind of a response to him. And so in my view, I mean, that's in a lot of the comics. I didn't make that up. That's actually in a number of the comics. And to me, the thing that made sense was that what Batman is doing is really Bruce's reaction to the trauma of his childhood in a way where, you think of like a superhero movie and you say, oh, well, somebody's out there trying to do something good for the city. And while that's true, especially in this movie, the notion is that as he begins, it's the only way he can make sense of his life. He can't get over what happened. And so he's kind of driven in a way that doesn't really make sense, to be honest. It's a kind of crazy mission that he goes on, and it's a compulsion. He sort of loses himself. He's got, when you're masked, you can kind of lose yourself, and there's an individuation. And I did a lot of reading about masks and the idea of tapping into the shadow side. And I think he would probably tell you he was doing it to improve the city, but the degree to which it's personal is beyond, I think, even his understanding at this point. What's driving him and how close he comes to the line. One of the reasons that I chose the Riddler in this story, aside from the fact that I was thinking of serial killers that were inspired from, like, The Long Halloween, Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale comic. I just wanted to do a story like that. And then that made me think of the Zodiac. But it wasn't just that. It was also the way in which they were two sides of the same coin. In a way, the Riddler doesn't have a problem with that line. He crosses it. But Batman comes dangerously close to crossing that line. And it's because he's not fully in control. And I think that keeps it very active. But anyway, longest answer ever to say, in my view, chicken and egg, Batman comes first.
Wow.
Very cool. Thank you.
Matt, as we told you, this is a film podcast, so our entire audience loves filmmaking and how scenes are done. And I wanted to take a deep dive with you about the Penguin and Batman car chase, because it is an incredible scene. I know earlier we talked a little bit about the practical effects that you used for the jump of the Batmobile into the fire. But the shots in that particular sequence, especially even when, like, Colin's like, I got you. And like that frantic shot and the way Greg set up that camera was incredible. Can you walk us through the practical nature of that sequence? Because it is an incredible scene. And for our audience, talk about the practical effects in terms of the Batmobile going through the fire, because it's nuts.
Well, I mean, the way that I like to work is I like to board as much as I possibly can. And in this particular case, this is the first movie where James Chinlin designed the sets in 3D. And so before they were ever built, I could put VR glasses on and we could walk into the sets. So we walked through those sets and I was like, this is incredible, because I could read through the scenes and we could say, oh, you know what? This set doesn't quite work because of this. Can you make this subtle change? And then to just be able to be in that Gothic world that he was creating, I was realizing, wait, I could shot make here. And so in prep, I was able to put the lenses on. So Greg, tested all these lenses, and I said I wanted to shoot the movie anamorphic, and we had shot Let Me In anamorphic, and I wanted to use that style, and we wanted to bring in this level of sort of texture and visceral grit and visual grit. And Greg deliberately sought out the most technically flawed anamorphic lenses you could possibly have, because I was really obsessed with the kind of 70s filmmaking that was kind of like in the vein of the tone that I thought sort of was our movie, that was kind of like, you know, The French Connection or like Clute, like these neo-noir films, and they were, you know, that were shot, you know, in many cases anamorphic, and those lenses at that time were rough. They did not, you know, the whole idea was to get the widescreen experience, but in order to do that, the elements came together in a way that there were a lot of really, really beautiful imperfections. And so we wanted to pull as much of that in as possible. And once we kind of tested the range of lenses, I had them take those focal lengths designed to those lenses. Like we had one, you know, we didn't have an 80 or an 85. We had an 88 because there was something wrong with it. And literally the camera house said to us, you don't want these lenses. And we were like, yeah, no, we do. We like these lenses. And, you know, Greg is really a master at all that, because he's really, I remember when we first met that I was talking to him about a shot that he had done in Bright Star, which I'd seen. And he was like going, oh, well, in that one, I had a toilet paper holder and I was holding the lens elements, and he was getting, there's an incredible shot where you see some needlepoint and the thread, and it's this beautiful macro shot. And I asked him about it because I was obsessed about it. I'm obsessed with macro shots. And he said, yeah, well, that one wasn't really a lens as much as it was me holding the elements and a toilet paper holder. So we were doing all that. And then once I had those, sort of that list of lenses that we liked, we brought them into VR, and then I could go in with an operator who knew how to use that. And I could say, okay, put on the 88 or put on the 44. And then I could go and shot make. So the first thing I did when we were doing the Batmobile chase was I had Rob Alonso, who is our stunt coordinator. I said, here's what I need to know. I said, I want to know everywhere we could possibly put a hard mount. Where can I put the camera on this car? And he took me through every single possible place. And we had scanned in the route, and we could play on a kind of loop what the path of the Batmobile was. And I could look at the shots in VR before we ever shot them. And I set all of these shots basically beforehand. And we made this crazy storyboard that were made of screen grabs from VR, from the lenses that we had found. And, and so it was an incredibly involved process. And then we had you know, Greg sent his team to do R&D and all of this, and they were like, wow, if we use a really small body, we can actually get a camera here. And we had a whole palette of places we could put the camera, and we put it everywhere. I wanted it to be a practical thing that felt like a 70s chase, like the French Connection or Bullet. I wanted hard mounts because when the car shakes, I wanted the camera to shake, and I wanted it to feel solid and locked to it. And so we found all those shots, and then, you know, one of them was like that, the one in particular you're talking about with the upside down. I was like, well, I'm into this very Hitchcockian point of view of putting the camera in the subjective point of view of the character, so you can put the audience into that experience. And so I thought it would be great at the end of all this kind of propulsive French Connection sort of craziness to suddenly be in the Penguin's point of view as he's lying upside down, as you have this kind of mythic appearance of Batman sort of with fire raging behind him. And all of that was found in VR. And then we just went out and shot it. So it was and then Greg wanted to do stuff to make it messier still. He'd say like, gee, if I put this filter of silicone on and we let the lens get wet, like then the lens will get wet. And we wanted this thing to be so visceral. And I think, you know, I have to say that it was an incredible team that put together, like I said, Dom Toohey earlier, when I said I wanted to jump the Batmobile through fire, he said, that doesn't have to be CG, we'll do it. And we did that. And so that shot you're talking about with Colin, that is a shot. So there's a shot you can do that's kind of a 50-50 where you take the camera and you put a mount off and you bring it off sideways so that you can see half of the frame is the driver and the other half is what's behind him. So we looked at that shot in VR and I was like, this is what, because I always wanted to have that feeling you were with them. And so I said, okay, so when those trucks flip, I think it'd be great to actually see Colin, so you never have the sense that we put him in some process thing. So that actually is Colin giving that performance in that moment when the trucks are falling. So when he goes like, I got you, like that was just gold. That was a take. I'm back somewhere else. They're on a racetrack.
Is that a one-shot kind of take? Is that like a dude, you've got to nail this?
That is a one-shot take because you're doing a thing where you're flipping a truck and you've got you're doing explosives and you do all this stuff. And I'm talking to Colin in an earwig and I'm looking at stuff on a monitor. They're out there in the freezing cold and I'm back on the stage because we're doing this in such a way that scene's being shot after I'm shooting other scenes on the stage because it has to be shot at night outside. Mm-hmm. So they're outside and so my day is like double long and I'm I'm there talking to Colin over. He's got an earwig, and he's in their car, and he's driving the car in that scene. The camera's in that position. They've got everything in place, and we're talking about that moment. And I said, look, this whole thing is about snatch and defeat from the jaws of victory. I want to see you connect to that thing. And he just launched into that take, and I was dying laughing. And that's the one that is in the movie. I think we did maybe one other take, but yes, there was. All of that stuff was super limited. And the point was to make sure that everything felt as real as possible, as practical as possible. And in those places where it is CG, because there is CG stuff, it was all done from the point of view as if you could only do it with a camera. So I never break, and I'd started this, back on Cloverfield, but I did it all through the Apes films. I never do a CG shot where you break the laws of reality, meaning you'll never see a shot from me where the camera is a bullet or something like that, or like moves through walls, because then you start going, oh, that must be a CG shot. I want to do something as if you only have the technology that would have been available if you were shooting it practically, even though in some cases the shots are full CG. I mean, the work that Weta did, so Weta, who did the Apes films with me, they did this sequence. And I have to say, the work they did is astonishing. They added all of the rain, like we did wet downs, but they added all of the rain. They did all the stuff with the trucks falling on him and all that kind of stuff. The work they did was astonishing. And I'm not surprised because they're an incredible, incredible group. But it was, that was an army that helped us to pull off that scene, and really some of the best technicians and artists in the world, and it was really thrilling to see it come together.
My favorite scene in the movie. So thank you for doing that, breaking that down. That was awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Matt, could you come on our show every week, because you're kind of the perfect guest for this show? So I don't know what you got going on next week. We'll just have to
find a time. I don't know. If we can find a good time.
We'll make it work. We have no lives, so you're perfectly fine. Matt, as much as you do in this movie that I love, there's something that you don't do, which I also love, which is not killing time showing us the murder of the Waynes.
Oh yeah.
And clearly we've seen it 1,000 times before. How many different ways can we see pearls drop in slow motion?
There you go.
So to what degree do you just go, look, we don't need to see that again? And is there any part of you that goes, but like, I want to do my take on it. Like I want my shot.
Did not want to touch it. No, absolutely right. I mean, the thing about it is that, look, it's been done brilliantly, and you can't come. Here's the thing: you come into a Batman movie with a level of excitement and a level of terror. And the terror is there have been great movies, and you're entering into a history that goes back more than 80 years into the comics. Like, people have their version of Batman in their heads. They're going to compare your version to that. You're really just a custodian for a character. Someday somebody else will get the mantle and they will take Batman and they will do what they think is right with Batman. And so you're terrified. And for me, one of the things that was very clear, I was like, well, we can't do that again. Like, that just didn't seem like the thing to do. What I wanted to do, though, is I wanted to find a way to recontextualize his origins. I wanted to touch on the origins without seeing the origin tale. And so I wanted to take Batman and make him be an early days Batman, an imperfect Batman, and a Batman who was more driven by his shadow side than he even knew. Like, if you were to ask people about Batman, they would say, like, oh, he's trying to fight to make the city a better place because of what happened to him as a kid. But truth be told, he doesn't have a choice at this stage. At this stage, he's doing it because it's the only way he can think to make meaning of his life. It's the only way he can cope. He's sort of compelled to do it. It's like an addiction. And so he goes out night at, it's a kind of crazy thing to do, right? He's taking the law into his own hands, and he's going out and he's revisiting the death of his parents in a certain way every single night. And so obviously he's not completely in control. And so I wanted him in this story to start a bit out of control, to be moving in a mode of vengeance, and have the story be an awakening for him. And the way in which I wanted to touch on the origins is that I wanted the Riddler to just be describing the history of Gotham, and that history, it would have to touch on the Waynes, because the Waynes are one of the founding families of Gotham. And I thought, what's interesting is, in a way, Batman, Bruce, is kind of stunted. He's stuck at that time of being 10. There are certain ways his image of his parents is the image of a 10-year-olds. He idealizes them. He this fight is in some way for them, and he'll never be able to bring them back. But there's no human being that could live up to the image that he's created from those 10-year-old eyes. And I wanted this story to shatter that. I wanted him to start to see the grays. I wanted him to see his origins and understand that his parents were human and flawed, and still the parents that he loved, but kind of take him and shake him to his core so that he could even question the nature of what he was doing at that moment. Was it even the right thing to be doing to be Batman? So in that way, I wanted to get into the origins, but I didn't want to see that scene. I didn't want to go into Crime Alley and see the pearls on cement. It had been done.
Fair enough.
Matt, one of the things I love the most about this movie is that, of course, we've absorbed all the other Batman films the way that you have, but there are so many times throughout the course of this movie where I felt like I was seeing something about Batman that I hadn't seen before,
cool.
which is pretty remarkable. And in this one, you make a decision to put your camera in his point of view, and we feel the eyes of the police staring at him, and not trusting him, right? And for the first time ever, it made me feel uncomfortable and really start to question why Bruce does this.
Oh, that's cool.
And so can you talk about like maybe tapping into the paranoia that exists in the other people around Batman? Like, again, for the first time, I actually felt like, oh yeah, it's really weird that this guy's doing this.
That's so cool. No, that's exactly right. It's funny. That's the first scene we shot too. Like that's the first time, that I saw on, as we were filming, Rob in the bat suit and everybody staring at him like, what are you doing here? And that conception, here's the thing. When you try to I wanted to ground this thing, and I thought, okay, I want to do the world's greatest detective version of this character. I want him to be brought into this sort of crime story, but I wanted it to seem real. And so the idea that you would be in a room with a bunch of forensic cops and beat cops and all these people, there'd been the murder of this high profile figure like the mayor, and a guy walks in a cowl with a cape, that's a little insane, right? Like you'd be like, what is this guy doing? And so I thought, in this iteration, because it's the early days, the only person on the GCPD who trusts Batman is Gordon. And Gordon is taking this crazy leap because he senses somehow that they have this connection. And there was an origin story actually that I had written into the script at one point, but there wasn't room ultimately. But my feeling is that even Gordon, as when you look at year one, the idea is that there's an event that sort of made Gordon realize, oh, this is a guy I think I might be able to trust. But that meant that when Gordon makes the crazy leap, I mean, it's not just Batman's sort of uncomfortable decision to be brought into this thing, it's Gordon's move. And Gordon is basically doing something insane. He's bringing a masked vigilante, a guy who's outside the law, a guy who is wanted by the law, into this crime scene because this murderer is leaving correspondence to the Batman. And he has a feeling that this guy has some instinctive ability that might be able to unlock what that's about and see what that is. And so that meant the idea of walking through that gauntlet of having all those cops looking at you with utter contempt and rage, like, okay. And because for multiple reasons, I mean, the idea that he is acting outside of the law, but also the idea that he is clearly in some way trying to root out corruption. And obviously this is a very corrupt police force in Gotham. And so there are myriad reasons why they would not trust this guy, why they'd hate this guy, why they'd love to bring him out behind a dumpster somewhere and give him a beating. And so the fun of that was to put the camera in Batman's shoes and to see what it would look like. And what was so interesting when I was talking to Rob about doing that scene, because I was like, okay, we're going to do a crime scene. You're going to walk in and it's going to be like, it's a serial killer scene, except you're wearing a cowl and a cape. Really weird. And so to try and find the real way to do that, what was so great is Rob was like, I knew that Jeffrey had to bring him in, that Gordon had to be the reason he was there, and that everyone would be looking at him with contempt. And I love the guy, the forensic guy who's got the flashlight, and he's like, is all this blood from his head? And he goes, no, and he tries to come over to show the hand, and he kind of walks into this wall that is Batman. He's kind of like awkward. He's like, excuse me. And like that the humor would come from the idea of how weird this was. And so, what I talked about with Rob was, he was like, I am so embarrassed as Batman to be walking in my suit and be looked at by these guys. The whole point of the suit is that I'm in the shadows. So now I'm being looked at by these guys. I don't want to be looked at by these guys. He goes, so I think I've got to block them out. And he said, I think the way to do that is, I think I come into this scene and I'm feeling all that and I block it out and I'm kind of like a shaman. I walk in and he talked about it almost as if he had a kind of spiritual connection to this idea of the crime, like that he was so He had to block something out with such sort of force that he's kind of very instinctual and connected to detail. And so instead of looking at their faces, he's only focusing on the details. And so that's the way he moved. That actually determined the way he spoke and moved in the scene. And that was the first scene we were shooting with him as Batman. So that was part of the exploration of like, how do we take this guy and make him a ghost in the scene? And so that was all part of the exploration.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that stuff. Matt, I want to get your perspective on this because I found this. I love this story. And Rob's talked about this before. He was shooting Tenet. And he basically lied to Nolan, had to leave the set on the day to go do his screen test for Batman. And Nolan knew exactly where he was going before. I think Rob was like, I had a family emergency, but Nolan's like, no, you're going to the Batman audition.
I mean, I think Warner Brothers had to like. There's such a history there that I think there's no way, and obviously Tenet was a Warner Brothers movie, so it's not like they're like, oh, gee, you know what? If Chris finds out, that would probably be pretty bad if we hadn't told him. So obviously Rob was in an awkward position, but I'm sure that the way he found out was probably from Warner Brothers. You know, they needed to let him know because you don't want to go behind Chris Nolan's back. So, you know, especially since they were just about to make this movie together. So yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say? Oh
no, that was the question. Was more of like your perspective. Like when he came to screen test for you, you knew he was shooting Tenet. So like, totally. Had you and Nolan communicated at all about your Batman film and his Batman films and kind of like.
No, we hadn't. I mean, I'm a huge admirer. He's an incredible filmmaker. I love Chris Nolan. And to be honest, we don't really know each other. I just know his work and I have great admiration for it. And, obviously when I think about when I talk about the terror, that you have in approaching a Batman movie, a huge part of that, I mean, certainly it's because of Burton and the history of things, but also for me, it's also very much because of Chris Nolan. I mean, he had a high bar, to try to clear, to try to come up to try to even come close to meeting. I mean, I think that The Dark Knight is an incredible film, and I was haunted by it and by Heath Ledger's performance and just the conception of that version of that character. So yeah, I mean, I was aware that he was doing Tenet, and I thought that was really cool. In fact, I was a little, I wrote this with. Let me tell you actually how it really affected me. I wrote the story. I wrote this script with Rob in mind. I wanted him to be my Batman. I had no idea if he was going to be Batman. And when it was announced that he was cast by Chris in Tenet, I was devastated because I was convinced that if he was going to choose, because he'd been doing all of these art films, and he'd been working with all these interesting filmmakers. One of them, a really close friend of mine, Good Time, and he did Lost City of Z with my friend James Gray, who's one of my best friends. And I was like, he might only, if he's going to do a blockbuster, will it be Batman? And would he do more than one? And so when he's doing a blockbuster with like one of the definitive Batman filmmakers, I thought, okay, so there goes that. He's not going to want to be Batman. I had no clue, And so it was really exciting when, my partner Dylan happened to have a general meeting, and I asked him kind of like on the sly, I said, look, you got a general meeting, but we're writing this for him. Like, this is what it, if he doesn't want to do it, I don't know what I'm going to do. And Dylan was like, I'll kind of feel it out. I'll just kind of see how it goes. And what was cool was Chris brought it. I mean, I'm sorry, Rob brought it up. And so when Rob brought it up, Dylan was like, I think we might have a shot. He seems like he might be into Batman. I was like, all right, cool. So I thought that there was a chance. So that was one of those things where it was a really crazy thing where he was doing the screen test in that time. And in my mind, there was no question that Rob was going to blow it out, and we were just going to do that. But you have to do it because they've all done it, right? Like you do the screen test, you put him in the suit, you do that whole thing. But knowing that he was coming and sneaking away from Tenet to do that there was a particular vibe to that was kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Matt, that's cool. I'm really glad that we were just talking about Christopher Nolan, because whenever you direct a Batman film, whenever there's a new Batman film coming out, we as fans automatically, we really want to know what Tim Burton thinks. We want to know what Christopher Nolan thinks. We want to know what Zack Snyder thinks.
Yeah.
Because you're associated with this franchise forever. So as a director, when you decide
you
that you're going to jump
Joel
into this
too,
world.
Joel,
yes, Joel, of course. Yes. To what degree do you have to accept that if you're going to dive into the world of Batman, this isn't just 1 or 2 years of your life, it's not 10 years of your life, it is the rest of your life? Because from here on out, when someone else takes over Batman, they're going to want to know, well, what does Matt Reeves think? Like, you have to accept you will be asked about Batman. Or they're going to say, oh my God, he was the one who messed it up. Like, no matter what you do, you're part of a lineage, right? No one's saying that. I promise you, no one's saying that.
I know you're not, but what I'm saying is when you're entering, you're going like, look, this is some serious stuff, because whether you like it or not, if this was a flame out, it is the most high profile flame out. You're doing it with a character that's been around for over 80 years, with movies that people love, with a character that means so much to everyone. I mean, like, I would tell you when I was writing, I would see people, suddenly you start focusing on different things depending on the thing that you're doing. I know when I'm editing, I start thinking about cutting. And when when we're mixing, I start thinking about sound. You become attuned to these things. When I was writing, I was noticing that when I walked down the street, everyone seemed to have a Batman baseball cap on, or like somebody with a baby Batman onesie, and you go like, uh-oh, this is trouble. There are too many people invested in this. It's not like you can just do this and then hope people don't notice.
There are Nolan movies in which like the Batman symbol is just scattered. Like before he ever did Batman Begins, I think there's one in Following, and I think one in Memento. So like even in like previous Nolan movies, there's Batman symbols in there.
What was he doing?
You didn't see any apes onesies when you were looking around when you were looking around?
The apes onesies, they're few and far between. It's like I love that franchise and those movies, and they're they have some great fans. But Batman is another thing. Batman is like that goes way back, and no, I don't think I saw any Caesar onesies.
So I would buy that. I would buy a Caesar onesie.
I totally would. I'm not saying I think it's right, but I do think, that it's, you're aware of it when you get into it, and you think, it's a cool idea to think that somebody, look, that's the cool thing. You get to be a custodian for a while of this character who's so beloved, and you got to give it your all. You have to do that. And the idea that someday that might be something that some future director is going to look back and go like, oh yeah, Matt was one of the people who did it, and I admired this part, but I got to find a way to make it my own. I mean, that was the thing. The challenge is that you have to find a way to make it different from what everybody else did. It couldn't be like everybody else's that had done it yet. It had to be, my version of it, and that's scary. That's really scary, because you could do that and go like, hey, yeah, it's different, and we don't like it.
We have 1 minute left. I have to geek out with you before you go, because I think one of the best shots in the whole film is that dark hallway, the oneer as he's fighting, and gunfire is lighting him up. It's so freaking awesome. Can you talk about real fast how you lit that, how you shot that? Is it an actual oneer? And
okay, it's not an actual one. First of all, I can tell you that the genesis of it, I wrote it that way in the script, and I don't know, I guess I'm kind of fascinated with that idea because it was something that I actually did in war with a CG character, right? So the soldier comes into the tunnels and when they're looking for Caesar, and Rocket attacks this guy, and the scene is lit by these muzzle flashes, and it's a very brief scene. And I thought, well, what if we take that, because in this story, that Batman can see into the night and that he's wearing these contact lenses. And I thought, oh, this will be interesting. How is he going to save Selina? I thought, well, what if he kills the power? So the only one who can see is Batman. And how do we know that? That will be in this point of view. And the only way we'll know is that they're taking shots at this guy coming like a horror figure. And the only time you can see where he is that each time one of the muzzle flashes goes off, you'll see him getting closer and closer and beating somebody. And then it goes black and in and out and in and out. So this was my conception for it. And when I was talking to Rob Alonzo, who, was my stunt coordinator, and he did second unit, and he's awesome. He's really responsible for the fighting style, because he was a fighter himself. And so when I wanted to get into the psychology of the character, I talked a lot to Rob about what I wanted and how, it had to come from character. So I was saying, in this scene, I want to do this. And what I had thought, because I was using my same VFX super from the Apes movies, Dan Lemon, and I knew enough about how this works to know that I could take a CG Batman and have them all shooting at a CG Batman and do all of that. And I thought, okay, so I could do this the way I did Rocket. We could do mocap. And I thought I was going to do it just like Apes. And what was so interesting is Rob Alonzo goes, no, we don't need to do that. So he goes, what do you? He goes, we could do it all for real. And I was like, you're kidding me. He goes, yeah. He goes, we'd have to break up that shot into pieces. Like I wanted to do it in one piece and just feel him coming out of the elevator, getting closer. And he said, but I can do it. I think I can do this for real. And so we did it for real. He got the guys to train, and they were really careful with those guns. And these were like, the absolute best sort of what they do. And what you're actually seeing is a scene that was lit with the muzzle flashes. And it was, I can tell you, it was broken into 3 shots. And we broke them, into these little sections. And so one thing had to go the other. The whole thing was very carefully choreographed. And we had the whole thing planned out. And then we just kept doing each piece until the piece worked. And once we had the piece worked, we said, okay, that's piece 1. Now piece 2. Now piece 3. And then Dan Lemon took it and they did some adjustments so that we could get, the bullets as they ping off of the sides of the building. Sides of the entire interior, and as they ping off of Rob's chest and all of that. But we did do it practically.
Damn.
Wow.
Damn. That's awesome. That shot is so badass.
Oh, cool. That's one of those things I have to say that when we tested the movie, I was terrified because I thought, oh my God, we're doing this detective story and people want to see a Batman movie. What if they come to the movie and they go like, why did you do this? We want Batman. And what was so cool was that part of the movie, the detective part, the audience loved. I was terrified. I thought at that point, by the way, the movie was much longer than it is now. It was way over 3 hours. And I thought, this is suicide. But what was super exciting was not only were those scenes resonating, the detective stuff, but when the Batmobile chase happened, when all that stuff, people loved Batman, man. And they erupted in that particular scene. When Batman came out of that elevator and all that stuff happened, the crowd went wild. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's gonna work. We are out of time completely, and we would love to keep talking to you forever. So,
all right, well, we'll figure out the running time. I'll need some oatmeal, but it's gonna be good.
We record on Wednesdays, so we'll meet you back here next week. Is that okay?
That won't work. I'm sorry.
Matt, this was a blast. Thank you so much for doing ReelBlend.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
All right, as I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, we thank Warner Brothers very much for setting this up. We thank Matt Reeves for coming on the show and talking about the Batman, and it's something we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks because we avoided some spoilers. I did get in a really good question for an answer about a cameo character that I am keeping out, and we will run it on a Cinema Blend shortly after the movie is out. I've realized in doing, we did a spoiler-free review of the Batman, and if you mention that Robert Pattinson is in the movie, people think it's a spoiler.
It's always it's such an interesting thing because all Batman of us movie? we always post our interviews. The three of us, we post our interviews in advance, and I don't think any of us really have any kind of a reputation for posting spoilers, but I'm always amazed at two things. One, the small insignificant detail people will tag as a spoiler.
Sure.
And then also this attitude of like those people who classify those small insignificant details as spoilers are also the first people to go eat up every Batman video that comes up on the internet. Like, it's just like whenever I want to avoid like a movie, spoilers for a movie coming out, I tend to try to mute stuff on Twitter. I try to avoid social media. I don't actively go on YouTube and watch other people's videos about that topic. So I don't understand this idea.
I'll use Spider-Man No Way Home as a recent example because you guys remember I got sick and I was not able to make it to the premiere. So I had a window of like 4 days where people had seen it and I needed to avoid it. Like the last thing I would do is click on someone's interview package. Right. Just for fear that anything would get out, where someone would mention a key detail.
Yeah, and maybe something that's and we've talked about this on the show. So maybe something that's not a spoiler to me is a spoiler to you. Okay, then don't click on my video.
Yeah,
avoid it. Like watch the movie first and then go do a deep dive.
Yeah, it's just spoiler alert. Matt Reeves directed the Batman.
Yeah. Also, sorry everybody. The Batman is in the Batman.
Kevin, why would you? Come on. Gosh, I don't know why you
was just on our show.
Talking about the Batman.
We spoiled that. Sorry, guys.
You made it this far. All right, let's get to box office predictions for this movie, which is, I think, really difficult to land on for this reason.
It is.
One, it's highly anticipated, and the recent performances of Spider-Man No Way Home and also Uncharted, which even I think the studio would tell you overperformed by their expectations, prove that people, if there's a movie in theaters that they really do want to go see, they are willing to come. Now, this is a 3-hour movie.
Sure.
Which we talk about all the time, cuts into the number of different times that you could air it or screen it. But I wonder if these multiple screen, multiplex 20, 25 screen theaters are going to have it on almost every screen possible.
Oh, yeah. It's the only thing that's big. I mean, Uncharted already had its solid 2 weekends. I mean, obviously, and one of the cool things about Uncharted was that it really showed that Holland is a star outside of Spider-Man. Yeah. But I mean, I guess you could argue Uncharted was a big game, so people would.
Yeah, but I don't think the average person knows that.
Right. But it made a lot of money, and like Holland obviously had the number 1, number 3 film in the first weekend. But with Batman's interesting to me because, and we'll dive into this in our review. This is a very dark film. This is not for kids whatsoever, in my personal opinion. And I think that, and I'm not saying you can't take your kids to see it, but I'm just saying it's not really a movie that, like Spider-Man No Way Home, even though it's dark, there's definitely a older kid friendly aspect to that film, even though it deals with dark territory. Batman is strictly basically Seven and Zodiac with Batman in it. So and I don't know how that's going to play with kids or repeat viewings of the film. But box office is fascinating because we see tracking come out way early. Sometimes I saw tracking for this movie that was like at 125 million or whatever it was for the opening weekend. And, then we've kind of gone back and forth in the text thread. I think Jake found a link the other day that the film was tracking at possibly over 100 million for opening weekend. To be honest with you, I have absolutely no idea. I think that
you got Uncharted. You won with Uncharted.
I'm gonna go with. I'm feeling like 97 million on this.
Specific.
And like the other day, I said 130, and then I started thinking about it a little more, and I was like, okay, all right, hold on a second. It's really dark. It's long, and it doesn't really have the kid angle on it. I don't think. And I do feel that parents are going to read reviews for it. And a lot of reviews are going to talk about the dark nature of it. And I don't know if that's going to, maybe parents are going to go see it first. I mean, at the end of the day, when I saw The Dark Knight, Nolan's Dark Knight, that felt like an R-rated movie. That felt like Heat. And so Reeves's film feels like an R-rated Zodiac or Seven. So I don't know tonally, even if the previews would parents would see that and go, it's a little heavy. I'm going to go 97. That's where I'm feeling.
I am going to go to the number that you were floating earlier, which is 130.
Okay.
I think it's going to do extremely well.
Yeah.
I think that while everything that you just brought up is correct, and I don't see, families or kids supporting it, I think that the popularity of this character is through the roof. And I think even the people who are online talking about how much they hate it and maybe support another version of it, they're still going. And I do think, all I know is when I came out of that movie, and we'll talk about this in the review a little bit later, I immediately wanted to go see it again. Now, I saw it at a press screening and had to wait. But if you see it on Friday night and you love it, you can go back on Sunday. And I don't think a lot of people, there are going to be some people who honestly do want to do that. So I think this is going to be one of those movies where, like, No Way Home did $260 million. If can Batman do half of that? Yeah, I think Batman can do half of that.
And it's an interesting point. Weirdly enough, though, this is only based on pure feeling. So when No Way Home was coming out, think about the week leading up to No Way Home, and then think about the week leading up to the Batman. They're definitely both very hyped, but there's a very gigantic difference in terms of the hype for both of those movies. And I'm not saying that Batman doesn't have hype; it definitely does. Sure. But No Way Home was in an astronomical different category. Like it was, there was a sense beyond for that film, no pun intended. Like that was genuinely like you had to see that movie. You had to see it in theaters. The build up, the possibility of Andrew and Toby. With this movie, there's really not anything crazy spoiler that I feel like people would like. Is there anything in the Batman that people are waiting to find out?
Yes.
No. Oh, you think?
What?
I'm not going to say it.
I can't say
No.
Yeah.
I mean, that I don't think that's a spoiler question.
There is a question that a lot of people have asked me.
I don't know what that question is.
Okay. Do you mean to say it? And then if we need to cut it out, we can cut it out.
Well, let's clarify that we're not giving anything away.
I'm not answering the question, but everyone has come up to me and asked one question, which is, does the Joker show up?
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Then we'll leave it at that. And that's a legit question.
Yeah.
It's not a spoiler because it's not a spoiler to ask that question because even when you were talking to Joaquin Phoenix. I'm talking to people, yeah. For Joker, we were like, oh, is Batman going to be in it?
Yeah, is Batman, yeah.
Right. But I see what you're saying. That's not like on the level of Toby or Andrew showing.
No.
Sure. I totally, I understand that. Okay, so Kevin's at 97. I'm at 130 million. Jake, where are you for opening weekend?
I think I'm going to split the difference and say 115. I mean, the reviews are really solid. We haven't even gotten to ours yet, but and granted, not that this is the be all end all of things, but really positive word of mouth. And yeah, I do think, yes, Spider-Man is a little bit more family friendly. And I think it also had the benefit of coming out during the holidays when like things were kind of like people's like work lives and school lives were kind of starting to slow down. So they had a little bit more free time and so I think they had that going for it. I think we're still very much, and people are back at work, people are back at school. I think if it opens anywhere close to 100 million or anything over, you've got to be astronomically happy with that if you're Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
I mean, you've got it's a first time 100 million for a 3-hour dark first time Batman that's more film noir than action blockbuster. Be happy with, take that to the bank.
I think we're all in that $100 million camp. Now, I found this really interesting. So I was looking at Rotten Tomatoes just now, and we'll dive into our reviews later in the show. But Batman currently has an 87%. Jackass Forever has an 86%. Just want to give that perspective for a second.
Okay.
The best thing I will say, it is a good movie. The best thing that Batman has going for it is not even so much that it could open huge. It's really got no competition for the month of March. It has the opportunity to own March. So even if it opens at $100 million this weekend, weekend 2 could be a $60 million weekend.
Sure.
Which it's got nothing but leg potential moving forward.
This is a legacy character. This is a huge character. At the end of the day, people are going to go see a new Batman movie. There's no question. But I mean, the question then becomes, when we'll get into the review, is when does a Batman film become too dark? Like, I read an article today about how dark this character has become over the years, obviously with Nolan's films and Snyder and it's just gotten darker. I mean, this movie is is very dark, really dark.
But it still doesn't answer the question if he's wearing hockey pads or not.
I know.
That's the spoiler question. Hey guys, I don't mean to take the conversation off the rails, but this has now become a bit for the show now. We now have another cast member joining Oppenheimer.
Oh, wait, Jake, save it. You got to save it. Yeah.
Did you see it?
No, I didn't see it, but we do the Oppenheimer cast update after the ad break.
Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
And then we'll get to Mr. Nolan's expanding cast on the other side of the show.
It's Kevin. Kevin has joined the cast.
There's 2 new ones that since we last did our show. Every week we're going to give you guys a little.
Is one of them this guy?
A taste of
the one that you're talking about that came out today, and then there's another one that came out a couple days ago.
Okay. On the other side of the break, we'll update you on the Oppenheimer cast. All right, as promised, Jake is about to update us on the latest additions to Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer cast. Sooner or later, the 3 of us are going to get cast in it. I'm waiting for that day to come.
Or
but today,
we're going to be the only ones that aren't.
But today it is.
And it's Jason Clarke. Jason Clarke has been added to the cast of Oppenheimer.
Oh, interesting.
But isn't it strange? I mean, at this point, though, you have to imagine there are only so many lead characters. So it's going to be a point where we're seeing all these big names, but I feel like at a certain point, these guys are only going to be in the movie for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Not every single one of these people can be a lead in this movie.
I mean, it could be 10 hours long.
It's Nolan, man. In Nolan, we trust, man.
Yes. Who was the other name that you heard, Kev? You heard a second name?
I don't think this name was on our list last week, but David Dastmalchian from...
he was not.
From Dark Knight.
He got added after the fact.
Yeah. Yes. Which is cool because he posted on his Instagram that he auditioned for Dark Knight in Chicago years ago, and obviously he had a memorable role in the Dark Knight. It was small, but it was memorable. I mean, that was probably his face was so David's face is so interesting as an actor, but even in that world of Batman, it was even more interesting to play with in terms of what his character was dealing with and what he was doing. But now that he's kind of taking on a bigger role, hopefully in Oppenheimer, he's an amazing actor, and obviously he was great in Suicide Squad recently, and he was great in Dune. I mean, this guy's living the crazy.
I could see him being the next great character actor.
He is a comic book junkie too. Every time he does interviews, every time a new project rolls around, he was in Ant-Man, obviously the Ant-Man franchise. He's a he loves it. He loves that stuff. So I'm so happy for him because he keeps getting great roles.
And he's just I just love how he's such an interesting actor. He really, when he's on screen, there's a presence to him that I just love. He's phenomenal.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get to the SAG Awards, which just were handed out on Sunday. So it's Tuesday when we're recording this, but Friday when you're all listening to it. So the SAG Awards were the previous week, and we want to talk about if they shaped the Oscar race and how so. And interestingly enough, I think that 2 of the winners feel like they are locked in, and that would be Will Smith and
Ariana DeBose.
Ariana DeBose, yes. Those 2 seem like the ones who they've been front runners in their category, getting a nod from the Screen Actors Guild, which is the actor's body, and that's the same body that votes for the Oscars, puts them in stronger status. The one that shocked me coming out of this was the supporting actor race, because the person who I thought would be the front runner, which would be Cody Smith-McPhee for his performance in Power of the Dog, and he ends up losing to Troy Kotzer for Coda. And then Coda wins Best Ensemble. So now it wasn't competing against Power of the Dog. And I was a little bit, I guess I'm surprised. I didn't realize that Power of the Dog wasn't a SAG Ensemble nomination. So, and of course there were only 5 and there's 10 for Best Picture. So Best Picture could shake out in a totally different way. But Coda winning completely surprised me. I did not stay up to watch the show. Got up Monday morning and checked the results and was stunned to find out that Coda, and not that I don't think it deserves it, I think it absolutely deserves it, but it's fantastic to see it getting the recognition that it deserved. Were there any big time shocks coming out of it that hit you? Chastain? Yeah.
But that race is the most up in the, honestly, it doesn't matter really who won that category that night. I felt like it would have been, there was a part, and I wanted Chastain to win, but there was a part of me that kind of wanted Gaga to win just to like throw the whole race up, because you guys know that none of the 5 Oscar nominees and Best Actress are nominated for BAFTA. So a BAFTA win isn't going to help. That's not going to help clear things up. It's the most nuts that category has been in years. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen there.
I also love the Coda win was great too, because I feel like I'm kind of in this weird boat now where no pun intended, because the movie's about fishing. Well, the characters are on fishing boats. But I kind of want to see this movie win now. I feel like it's such a great film. I mean, Power of the Dog is obviously still, I believe, considered to be the front runner to win.
Well, I mean, I think the problem is that, and I get that these sort of rules are made to be broken, but like, and I get what you're saying. I'd be curious to see if this affects Critics' Choice voting, which the 3 of us are members of, if like maybe more people are willing to go, that's interesting. But like Coda not having director, editing, really any kind of technical nomination. It's only got 3: Best Picture, Screenplay, and Supporting Actor. And it just, and now granted, it's very possible it goes 3 for 3. And then, but I just
these
feel
are
like,
the awards that you want to win right now, right? They're the ones that
100%. As like we're all starting to vote.
Now ride this momentum. Yeah, like the momentum, like Coda has that, like, I don't know, I feel it. I feel a good vibe with it. I was happy to see it win. It was a great story that it won. It was historical that it won. Troy's speech was incredible.
Speeches are a bit, you're spot on that. Speeches can make someone right now. Yeah, you get up there and you make an impassioned speech, like in like a SAG or a Golden Globes or something like that, and the speech goes viral. Like Will Smith's speech for the SAG, whenever he was up there, I was like, oh, that's done. He just won the Oscar with that speech.
The one thing he said and Will Smith said in the speech, which I thought was fascinating, he kind of gave away the idea that the movie had to get final approval from Venus and Serena, or the Serena from the Williams sisters.
He said they wouldn't put their name on it until they saw it. I mean, the movie was already going to happen, but they wouldn't come out and support it unless they approved of it, which makes sense. Which
was interesting, because they cut to the table, and you saw like a bit of almost like an embarrassed reaction, like we weren't supposed to tell people that. Like, because,
I didn't read it that. I read it as like, damn right, we're not going to let you tell our father's story. Yeah, I read that as like something they were proud of.
Oh, no. I'm not saying they weren't proud of it. Yeah. I thought that maybe the way I read that moment was that like Will Smith basically said, we're not going to put our name. They're not going to put your names on it unless you approve what we made. Sure. And I don't know that they wanted that out there.
I mean, I never saw that like in print or in any of his interviews, but like that makes sense to me. That's not something that like super surprising. Like, honestly, I feel like I would do the same thing. Like, I'm not going to, like, I'll tell you what, you make the movie about my dad, I'll watch it. And if I approve of how you painted him, then I will. Sure, I'll get out and promote it, but I'm not going to do it if that doesn't seem out of the ordinary to me.
Oh no, it's not out of the ordinary. I just thought it was cool.
There was a photo that stemmed from that win, which sometimes you see like a random shot of people all together, and you were like, oh, that's a Renaissance painting. That's the commentary because there's so much weird stuff going on.
Hang it in the Louvre.
It was Will Smith, Meryl Streep, Lin-Manuel Miranda and Venus Williams. Just the four of them together. And I mean, you'd kill to have a photograph with any of those people, and the four of them just randomly hanging out was really, really funny. You know, the one thing about Coda too, before we move on, is that, you know, we talk about this all the time. You don't want to be the front runner so early, right? Mm-hmm. So people are being told the whole time, like, oh, it's Power of the Dog. Oh, it's Power of the Dog. And what if you're iffy about Power of the Dog and Coda wins SAG and you haven't watched it yet? Right. Mm-hmm. So you go, oh, all right. Wow, that actually won. Let me throw it on. And then right now, as you were saying around the voting time, you go, oh, this is better.
This is good.
It's
because I'm finding. Are you finding a lot of people are watching it right now? I'm finding like a lot of people in my newsroom are coming up to me going,
my bosses have watched it.
Yeah. But they're watching it right now because, like Sean said, everyone's talking about it right now. Like, forget the fact that we were talking about it in August. Now is the time where, like, not like quote unquote the average moviegoer is finding it on Apple TV.
You know what's interesting too? You just said something about speeches, and I kind of like the way this season has shook out in that we didn't have a Globes. Mm-hmm. And the Critics' Choice has been pushed back. So we haven't seen, sometimes you get to the Oscars and you feel like the person has given the same speech 7 times, and we haven't had to see, like, this is Will Smith's first time, honestly, standing up and taking an award on a telecast.
Wasn't that kind of weird? Like, to think that, like, we've never seen Will Smith accept an award like that before in his entire career.
Yep.
Do you ever wonder, like, it's funny, you bring up something interesting that I've always actually been curious about. Like, so let's say somebody has like a long awards run. They win everything, right? BAFTA, SAG, they win the Globe, they win the Oscar.
Yeah.
Do you think there's some kind of like sit down before all the award season starts and says, all right, we're going to save this piece of information for this speech?
Well, I think they get help. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, because remember that.
But if you don't win the Oscar, win the Oscar though. And you held on to the best thing.
Yeah.
And you haven't given that part of your speech yet.
I mean, that's the risk but I remember when Brad Pitt went on his run for Hollywood, all of his speeches were incredible.
Yeah.
And then it came out, I think it came out that like Fincher was helping him with his speeches. that's why they were so incredible.
There was a comedian recently, I'm sorry, who said that he got hired by Ben Stiller when Ben Stiller was making the talk circuit, like the not Letterman. God, that's how dated I am. And he was just writing interesting stories for him.
Yeah.
Like Ben would tell a story from his past, and this guy would sort of punch it up. Yeah. And then Ben had that to tell. I guarantee that happens for the awards.
Someone told me the other day, another person who does what we do and does the junket, someone told me that they were doing an interview and a person started to tell the story, and then like 10 seconds into the story pauses and goes, no, I'm going to save that for Graham Norton.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've had moments where like I've done an interview with somebody and they've given me something really good, and then like I'll be under embargo and then I'll see the story on. Yeah.
Or like you see Fallon. Like a better punched up version of it. Right. Like there have been times where like someone told me a story and then I see them on Fallon and they tell the same story, but they just tell it so much better to Fallon than they
animated,
do. Yeah.
Like they care. Like, again, like it's interesting. We work in a very weird business. Like I interviewed Jennifer Garner and Mark Ruffalo the other day for Adam Project, and they were telling me a great story about 13 going on 30, but we have to hold our interviews until Monday. I believe. And so now I'm like, okay, they're probably going to tell this story to 25 people between now and Monday.
Yeah, because they've got the red carpet and they got the national show. Okay, let me ask you guys something. Do you think, now we're going down a self-serving road, do you guys think, and I think the answer is yes to this question before I even ask it, do you guys think that like producers for the late night shows do a deep dive on our stuff to try to find, because there have been times where like I've watched your interview, Sean, or your interview, Kevin, or even my interview or other people's interviews, and we've gotten like a really good like nugget. I'm like, oh my God, that's such a great little piece. And then the late night host will almost bring up that specific thing
that's happened.
Where I just go like, did your producers like see that in my interview or in Kevin's interview? Or, you know, like just, I mean, that's, I mean, I guess they've got, I'd imagine
even
they got teams of
people. You know, even an intern. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
I don't think that like Fallon or Kimmel is looking at my stuff, but I think they've got teams of people whose job it is to go look up to, because Lord forbid, why would they come up with their own interviews? They only get 20 minutes on a national stage. Why would they come up with their own questions?
Well, but that's the thing. They're doing it every single day with different people. There's no way they can keep track of.
I'm sorry. What do we do?
The they have to keep track. We don't do it like not on that level.
It is kind of insane to think about like when they have like
the
3 guests
they talk
a night.
To?
Yeah, sure. and then it's not like it's live to tape. We're not saying it's not. We're not saying what we do is not hard. I'm just saying, but that is an interesting gig. Like you can't watch everything. There's no way you can watch everything. There's no way people are prepping stuff for you. They have to be. It's impossible.
Absolutely.
There's no. We can barely keep straight. Like the other day on Monday, and I think people like hearing this behind the scenes stuff. I think it's interesting. On Monday, yesterday, actually, Jake and I and Sean, I think we all had like 4 different projects we were covering. So like on my desk, I have like my Sam Jackson notes. I have my Adam Project notes. I have my Fresh notes. And then I have my Sean Levy notes for Adam Project. And then like I'm sitting there interviewing Samuel Jackson on my computer and I'm thinking to myself, okay, what am I going to ask Ryan Reynolds tomorrow? And it is, and again, there's no complaints. I'm not digging ditches. I'm very happy with what I do for a living. But it is like, I don't think people really realize how like the juggling sometimes it's kind of insane. And that's why it kind of makes me appreciate the late night guys, because that is crazy. Like 2 major A-list guests, 5 nights a week, each night, plus a music act.
And I think you can notice the interviews when they are reading questions that were handed to them too. I think you can get a sense of,
Well, the one thing I don't like about late night sometimes is I'll watch like Fallon or somebody doing an interview, and I'm not knocking anybody. I actually like Fallon. I don't like Fallon. I love Kimmel.
I don't like the Fallon bit he does where he gets actors to slide phrases into other people's junket interviews. I think that is unbelievably disrespectful, and I hate that he does that. And as someone who does interviews,
I didn't even know there was a thing.
It's a thing that he like gets actors to like, hey, while you're doing press for your movie, say something about like buttermilk, like work buttermilk into your interview, and then they'll do a montage of them doing junkets with all of us, saying, oh yeah, I had a glass of buttermilk the other day, and it's just like that. I think is the most unbelievably disrespectful. It's like, dude, you get 20 minutes with these people on a national stage. We get 4 minutes. And like to like make the most out of for our livelihood, and you're going to take up our time. I think that is unbelievably disrespectful, and I hate Fallon that he does that.
Well, I mean, okay, all right. Well, that aside, my only thing that I don't like about late night sometimes is that you can tell the story is that they already know what they're going to talk about. Yeah, like you'll see somebody like they'll like bring up a topic that is clearly like a serve to okay, we've already discussed this, and I get it, and that's just how it is. I mean, but like we all operate in different realms and different areas.
It's the same way. Sometimes I find people are disappointed when I explain the junket process to them. Like I think people really do think sometimes that we are friends with a lot of these people and we sit down in a room and just catch up and talk. And I'm like, no, I'm one of like 80.
Why did you leave after 4 minutes, Jake?
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite. When someone comments on a junket interview, that's like, why didn't you talk to them longer? And why did you get up and walk out at the end? I'm like, that's because I chose it. They offered me 30 minutes with Tom Hanks, but I said, no, 4's enough.
Gabe is listening to this show after the fact, and his arm is twirling.
Oh my God! I forgot that we probably should move on.
But I find this interesting.
I think people interesting.
I honestly want people to tell us if that last 10 minutes or so was interesting to you. If it wasn't,
it's definitely interesting.
Let us know. Tweet us.
All right. This week in movies, Drive My Car is hitting HBO Max. The acclaimed Drive My Car. And Kev, I'll take the bullet for you as well too. I haven't seen it yet. Have you watched it?
So I have the screener. I'm watching it.
It comes on HBO Max tomorrow.
Yep, yes, and I'm gonna watch it.
Yes,
I have a screener for it, and I didn't want to like what for people out there. This is minutia, but we'll get sent links sometimes, and what we'll have to do to watch the movie is either watch it on the computer, which I don't really prefer because again, I'm not trying to complain. It's just more of like a viewing experience and giving the film the respect it deserves. Want that.
Yeah,
exactly. And so when you airplay these to your TV, it's usually condenses the aspect ratio, or it's like it's buffering. So when I found out it was coming on HBO Max this weekend, I literally said, okay, I'm going to make a point to watch it. And I will say this, and we are a movie show. I do feel like we all should have seen this movie, and I haven't seen it either. But one thing we explained on the podcast when the Oscar nominations came out is this: there are always 1 or 2 films that come out of the nominations that we had not been exposed to or had worked on or covered. But in this particular situation, I wish I had seen Drive My Car prior to the nominations, but we're going to watch it this weekend. And actually, the good news is none of us have voted for the CCA yet.
Yep.
So we're all going to be in line with the voting time that comes around because we're all going to watch it.
Okay. Fresh is dropping on Hulu, and I'm going to take a cue from Jake and not tell you guys any details about this. But I will say that it is highly original and has a lot of really interesting things to say about modern dating. And it's just so hard. I don't want to give anything away.
The closest comparison is like a From Dusk Till Dawn. Like, wouldn't you have loved to watch From Dusk Till Dawn? Not saying there are vampires in it, because there aren't vampires in it. But like, wouldn't you have loved to watch From Dusk Till Dawn, not knowing what it was about? And if you answer yes to that question, then don't look up what Fresh is about.
Correct. Just press play on it. It stars Sebastian Stan and Daisy, whose name is escaping me.
But I'll tell you, she's from Normal People. She's amazing. Let me look her up. I do want to get her. I want to give her Daisy Edgar Jones.
Thank you very much. She terrific in this.
Yeah, and she's also from Normal People, which had Paul, who is actually in The Lost Daughter, who we all interviewed for The Lost Daughter. That show's available on Hulu. I haven't seen the whole thing, but from what I've seen of it, it's pretty amazing. So, and she's a really great actor.
Do we all highly recommend Fresh? I highly recommend Fresh.
Yeah, I really, really loved the first two acts. I honestly think it went a little off the rails for me in the last act. It didn't. It didn't. I don't want to say it ended on a down note, but it didn't. And there was a point where I was like, "Oh my god, I love this movie!" And then by the end of it, I was just sort of like, "Okay, I liked that quite a bit." But but still, 100%, absolutely recommend.
Recommend it for sure. I mean, it's definitely. Like I told, we had Mimi Cave on, and she'll be part of a bonus episode, or I believe
she's our interview next week. So people have a chance to go to watch Fresh on Hulu this weekend and prep for our interview with her dropping next week.
Cool. So Mimi Cave directorial debut interview next week on ReelBlend. I liked it too. I thought it was interesting. Gave me American Psycho vibes, and I love American Psycho. And she does strike a really interesting tone. If you do watch the movie and you're curious about how they made the food look the way it did, well, you can tune into our interview next week because there's some pretty wicked stuff.
It's a great answer. Yeah. All right, let's get to the big one, the big dog of the week. Matt Reeves' film, The Batman. Jake, I'm going to throw it to you to start. How do you feel about how Matt Reeves reinvented this character and his world for the 3-hour feast that is The Batman?
I really loved it. I mean, I think we're at a point now where, because we have gotten so many different Batman films and interpretations of not just the character, but the city of Gotham and obviously his iconic villains, that my first and foremost question going into a Batman film is this an interpretation that I've never seen before? And I think this absolutely is. The way I've been comparing it, Kevin said it perfectly. It's 1/3 Fincher's Zodiac or Fincher's Seven. It's 1/3 French Connection. And it's 1/3 a Batman film. It's not what it is. Not is the big action extravaganza of Nolan. It's much more a detective film noir with spurts of action throughout. But there's long periods of time where there is no action. Now there's a lot of Batman, but it's Batman in these quiet film noir moments. I really loved this vibe. I really loved this feel. It felt like, even though it's a character that's been a part of my life since I've been aware of pop culture in my consciousness, but I've never really felt like I've seen him presented this way. Every angle of it, I just thought, oh, that's a cool choice. I liked that. And it's also a movie that I think is, I think a lot of people are going to walk out of the theater not entirely sure how they feel about it. And because I feel like it's a movie that's going to grow and grow. Because honestly, the more I think about it, the more I loved it walking out, but the more I think about it, the more I do like it. The question that I hate is like, oh, how does it compare to Nolan's films? And it's just like, well, they're different animals. Like, yes, they're both Batman, and I think Nolan's movies are probably a bit more accessible, easier. They would be more casual for me to like throw on, on a Saturday afternoon if I wanted to like just watch, a little bit of Batman. But I could see myself like preparing to watch The Batman on a Friday night. Like on Monday, okay, Friday night, I'm going to pour a whiskey and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch the Batman like that. You got to like prepare yourself for it because it's a lot. It is a lot of movie.
Oh. It is so much movie. Like that's the thing
so much
about
movie.
It is so much movie.
I hope that made sense. I hope my ramble made sense.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. Sense. And one of the reasons why I love it as much as Jake does is that it's the interpretation of Gotham to me is just as fascinating as we've seen on screen before, because I think Matt Reeves is interested in all of the different avenues that the movie can go down. So when it would detour and spend time with Colin Farrell's Penguin, or Carmine Falcone, played by the great John Turturro, or got into some of the back and forth between Arthur, played by Andy Serkis, and Robert Pattinson's Batman, I was enthralled. It didn't matter where it went. I was interested in where it was going because I thought each of the different threads that he picked up and pulled were really, really fascinating. What blows my mind is that this is a character who over the years has sustained adaptations and translations from so many different filmmakers, and they find new ways in. Like you're exactly right in the fact that Nolan's films are a completely different animal. Every single interpretation of Batman so far has been different. Burton's has been different from Schumacher's, and Schumacher's has been different than Nolan's, and Nolan is different than Snyder, and now Snyder's different from Reeves. And I think each of them have something really, really great about them.
Even Schumacher's, like there are aspects of Schumacher's Batman I really enjoy.
For sure. Definitely. So I'm blown away that we can go into a project like this. Like I made a comment and someone called me on it too, when I posted something positive about the Batman of like, I said, I think we're getting close to a point of Batman oversaturation. Like there's so much of this character. And yet for 3 hours, I was riveted by what I was watching. And so, and I went back at an opportunity to go see it at another press screening here in Charlotte. And that was,
you've seen it twice.
I've seen it twice.
Wow.
And, by the end of the second time, I was like, all right, that's enough. I'm done. Now I got everything I wanted to get out of it. Because it's long. It's definitely long. It's a sit. But the first time through, I was completely riveted in every aspect of it. And the second time through, it's weird. The second time through, I did see some of the seams and places where, and I think a lot of this is due to COVID and the way COVID hit that production. They had to shut down for a while. When they did get back up and running, they were limited in the number of things that they could do. And so I can't talk about some of the specifics without spoilers, but there are definitely scenes that I watch where I'm just like, I think you were cheated a little bit here to get where you needed to get, sort of thing. And would he have shot it differently if he had the opportunity to maybe blow it out? But I loved it. And I think Matt Reeves is, and I can't wait to see where he goes with this. I hope he continues to make, one or two more movies in this franchise, because I really want to see where he's going with it. Kev, where are you at?
Yeah, so this is an interesting film for me to talk about because like Sean and Jake are both on the love it side. I'm more on the really like it side, which side
is
of
totally
the film.
Fine.
Oh, no, totally fine.
But I say that not in like just because the internet is so like, oh, if you don't give it a 6 out of 5, then you hated it.
And that was the thing. When the social reactions came out yesterday, like I knew that I was sitting on like a 4 out of 5 for the film. I knew I didn't blown away love it, but I knew that I liked a lot of it and I loved some of it. And so like I prefaced my review by saying like, listen, like we live in a day and age where if you just like a movie these days, you somehow hate that film. And I think that we are. I don't really like where we are right now in terms of like film Twitter and culture, like in terms of that, in the sense of like everything has to be the best thing of all time or the worst thing of all time, better than this, better than that. If you come out the gate with the greatest Batman movie of all time, like, I feel like we need to, I mean, and I'm guilty of like, I am a very exaggerated individual. I am very over the top with cause I get excited. I'm an excited person. So when I see something that blows my mind, I am going to be like full force, like Dune blew me away and I was all into it. But at the same time, there is some times where you want to sit back and think about it and scale it back and actually just kind of like, break it down a bit. Now with Batman, there's a lot that I love. I'll start off with what I love and then I'll go into what I didn't love. What I loved about it is Greg Fraser and Michael Giacchino.
Oh my God. Some of the greatest Batman shots of all time.
Yeah, Fraser.
I don't think that's an exaggeration.
Yeah, Fraser's cinematography is absolutely astounding. I think the Batmobile chase on the highway at night with the rain with Penguin is outstanding. One of the best Batman scenes ever created. Michael Giacchino delivers one of the greatest scores of his career. I mean, this score is outstanding. It is a living, breathing character in this film. It is really the to me the driving force emotionally outside of the performances. It really is something that is ingrained in this gritty world. And like Greg, the way he shoots this film, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's dark, it's gritty, it's riveting, it's immersive cinema. This is truly visceral and immersive filmmaking. There's no doubt about that. When the film works, it really, really works. Like, I love the opening. Every action scene is incredible. Even the non-action scenes, there are scenes that I really dug. My biggest problem with the film is it feels long. And at the end of the day, there's a difference between a movie being too long in length or feeling long. 3 hours is not that bad. I mean, Titanic was 3.5 hours, whatever it was. Infinity War was 240. I think Endgame was 3 something, I want to say, or close to 3.
I think so, 302 or something like that.
Like, there's like, okay, Infinity War is the example I'm going to use here. That was like 235, 237, 240, whatever it was. That movie feels like it's 45 minutes long. Yeah. That movie goes by instantaneously. Every scene, there is no fat on that movie whatsoever. It is trimmed down exactly. It is one of the most relentlessly paced and edited films I've ever seen. It's incredible. Yeah. The Batman does sit in scenes for a long time. And I got to a point where I just got tired of watching Jeffrey Wright reading clues over and over again. And at the end of the day, I'm totally cool with the Zodiac and Seven thing. It's awesome. It's a great concept. But I don't know if you guys could disagree with me on this. This film could lose 30 minutes easily.
It's interesting because I picked it up on the second time through, scenes that held longer.
Too long.
And your criticism about them reading clues and sort of revisiting stuff. And I was like, it didn't bother me the first time through, not a little bit. On the second time through, I was like, all right, I kind of understand what Kevin's talking about.
Also, the script is a little on the nose at times. And again, these are very, very persnickety, nitpicky things that and again, it's so interesting because if you just cut to this part of the review, you go, oh, this guy hates the movie. No, I really like this film a lot. It just didn't, like, if I'm looking at Batman, I'm putting Begins, Dark Knight, BVS Ultimate Edition, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and Burton's Batman, maybe Batman Returns over this film.
Oh, that's interesting.
And Batman Returns, I'll take that back. But Keaton's Batman and everything else I mentioned, I prefer. I still think Affleck's the best Batman of all time. Now, I want to say one more thing before we move on. Pattinson's phenomenal. Great casting for Batman. The I'm Vengeance scene was the moment that I realized he was great. I knew he was going to be great. I wanted more Bruce Wayne. It's a very heavy Batman film. Very, very, very heavy Batman film. Paul Dano, phenomenal as the Riddler. That's the thing, is like, there's so much that I love about this movie, but the overall, I'm just like, it's good. It's not The Dark Knight. And I want to disagree with you guys just one bit on Nolan. I don't think Nolan's films are as accessible as you said. I think that at the end of the day, Nolan made Heat with Batman. So Reeves made Seven and Zodiac with Batman. Yes, this is much darker and it lingers a lot more. But I think Dark Knight is a crime drama just masked in a Batman film. I mean, it's Heat. That movie, the opening of Dark Knight is literally the shootout in Heat.
Yeah, but saying that it's remind you of a popular action film from 20, 30 years ago doesn't mean it's not. I mean, it had the biggest opening of all time whenever it came out. I'd say that's fairly accessible.
I'm not saying it's not. Money and box office doesn't equal accessibility. I mean, the Batman's good. Well, But if the Batman does 130 million this weekend, would you argue that film is now accessible?
I would say that Batman is accessible. And people haven't seen the film yet.
But I'm asking you though, do you think Matt Reeves' Batman is an accessible film to general audiences?
One of the first things I said whenever I got out of the Batman is I'm curious to hear what average moviegoers, average Batman fans think of it, because I think our modern generation today, when they think of Batman, they think of a Nolan film, and this isn't that. This is but also you have to keep in mind that the very first appearance
of far from it though.
No, but I think it's actually I think it's real far.
But it's so funny.
I think Nolan tipped it. Like Nolan was like, all right, we're going into like real genre filmmaking. Dark Knight, Batman Begins, we're going to get dark. And then obviously Snyder got really dark and Reeves got darker. It's just
fascinating,
really
though.
Inevitable.
Like, could anybody swing back the other way? Because prior to Nolan,
the fun Batman,
people forget like the 60s Batman is what kind of defined the character for generations.
Sure. And they would make the argument that they didn't make campy, but like they didn't seek out to make a campy Batman. Like to them, like that was serious Batman in the 1960s. Batman's just a reflection of an era. It's just sort of like so it kind of depends. It's hard to say what direction Batman's even going to go in because it depends on what direction the world goes.
Well, I guess Lego Batman was a swing back towards
sure, that's fair.
Well, so this is actually fascinating. This brings me to an interesting point. I actually think that Nolan found the sweet spot. Right? He made a great genre film that played with crime like Heat, but he also made a film that was arguably accessible, as Jake was saying, in terms of like being a film that broad audiences could enjoy and be entertained by. That I would argue Nolan found that balance between blockbuster and genre filmmaking. I really do.
Agreed.
I think that's why Dark Knight and Batman Begins are so incredible, because they play with this concept of, okay, larger audiences are coming to this. Like people who like Seven and Zodiac, that's not a ton. I mean, like in our world of film, and as much as we love film, you don't walk down the street and ask somebody and they're going to go, oh, I'm a huge Seven fan. Like those are some really, really dark films. No, they are. They should be. Fincher's one of the greatest of all time. But the Batman is definitely, this one is a lot more less accessible than.
Well, we're going to find out how popular it is when the box office comes rolling in, and we can talk about our predictions.
It's good.
It's fantastic.
Wait, where are you guys at on your ratings? You guys aren't like 10 out of 10, are you?
I mean, it's so weird because I never really, whenever I do ratings, I never do 5 like out of 5 unless I'm with you guys. So for me, a 5 out of 5 is different than a 10 out of 10 in a weird way. I'm much more like I would say 5 out of 5. But I wouldn't say 10 out of 10 if that makes any sense. Like 10 out of 10 sounds like
doesn't make any sense.
I know, which is why I don't like the whole like.
But I do find this fascinating.
The out of 5 thing.
Like Sean and I are only a half a point off from each other, and Sean is in more of a love it camp than I am. But what's funny about this movie, and I'm finding, especially in this discussion,
I would say 4.5. Yeah.
The discussion we're having right now, I'm finding that we're really not that far off from each other. Yeah. We all really like this film. It's
Kevin,
just that
you do a thing that always makes me laugh every time. Is like it feels like sometimes you get nervous that you don't like a movie enough.
Oh no, that's not what I'm saying.
And if we like it more than I'm trying to think of the last time you did this thing where you said where you were like, we're all kind of the same. We're all kind of the same. We're all kind
Hollywood.
of.
No, the point I'm making is that like I find that the difference between someone who loves this movie and likes this film, it's fascinating that we're only a half a point off from each other. That's what I'm saying is interesting.
But ratings are also subjective too. Like, like it's all, like your 4 out of 5 and my 4 out of 5 could be completely different things. Yep. In the same way that like 10 out of 10 to me feels different than a 5 out of 5.
I also think like each year you should only have 1 or 2 10 out of 10s.
Right.
Like if you have more than that,
which is why it's a weird thing. Honestly, I always loved the star rating, like 4 stars, because like Ebert used to throw out 4 stars all the time.
Mm-hmm. Because
no,
3.5 to him was a bad movie.
No, I will not stand by while you besmirch the name of Roger Ebert.
Sir, he was gracious.
Absolutely
that was
not.
A running joke about Roger Ebert.
No, are you kidding? Roger Ebert is the best person to ever put pen to paper when it comes to film criticism.
We are here because of Roger. We are literally doing a show right now because of Roger Ebert.
Like, no, you think he was gracious with his ratings?
In his last 5 to 10 years of film criticism, yes. In his last 5 to 10 years of film criticism, he became softer, and he more appreciated almost everything he was watching as opposed to being very critical of it.
Here's what I would argue. I think Ebert. Well, first of all, Roger Ebert's the greatest critic of all time in terms of like. That's not what we're arguing. I know. But we wouldn't be here doing the show if it wasn't for him. But my other point being is that like I think Ebert, maybe in his older age, got to a point where, like, and that's the thing about film criticism. Like, at the end of the day, I don't walk into a film wanting to destroy it or take it down. You know what I mean? Like, and when you actually understand the full process behind filmmaking and kind of what goes into it, you know, and I'm not giving bad movies a pass, but to me, there's always something good you can find in a film. And I try to be, you know, there are movies I obviously don't like and I'm going to give bad reviews to, but I also don't not love that he got maybe a little more, as you say, gracious in terms of like appreciating the art form of a film. Even if he didn't love the movie, Ebert was brilliant at finding things that made you appreciate the movies more. Sure. Like I would his reviews would actually, that's kind of like how I've always wanted to be as a critic. Is I want someone to watch my review of The Dark Knight and go, oh my God, I remember Kevin not airing the movie, but I want them to watch a shot like the truck flip. And I want them to think in their mind, oh, I heard that was actually practically done, because then it gives you a deeper appreciation for the filmmaking. The whole point of a film critic is really to assist the audience in their journey with that movie. And Ebert did that for me, and like regardless if he got more and more gracious, quote unquote, over his career.
And we also have to account for like what he was dealing with in the final 5 years of his life. Right. Like if that gave him a new life perspective, then I ain't mad about it.
Yeah,
we are off the rails. Let's move on to the blend game this week, which is hashtag Ava Duvernay Blend. Did anyone not pick Selma?
I did not pick
Selma.
Please
take it away.
I picked When They See Us, which is an incredible limited series about the Central Park Five. It's one of those, and this is such a cliche when you hear this sort of thing, but it's one of those things that is horrifying that it happened then, and you watch it, and it took place a while back. Maybe 15, 20 years ago? No, I thought it was the early 2000s. I don't know.
Okay.
It's terrifying because you could read that headline today and wouldn't be surprised. It's a horrifying, like anxiety-inducing series that is just the right length. I'm glad that they gave it the time and the respect and the dedication to not try to squeeze it into a 120-minute film. It tells the story of these kids. They were kids, and the impact that this had on them, and it's horrifying, and it's so well done, and it's so eye-opening. It's one of those things that I wish we could put it in front of everyone and make them see it, and make them realize where this sort of action comes from. And this isn't just an isolated incident. This is, this particular incident became famous, and we all know about it, and now is it's etched in stone because of the work that Ava did. But it also makes you wonder how many of these happened on a daily, weekly basis that we have absolutely no idea about, that no one did, that no one made miniseries about. Right. If you've never seen it, I can't recommend it enough. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful piece of work. And honestly, if it ends up being the best thing she's ever done, she should be incredibly proud of that, because it is pretty awe-inspiring.
Have you raised your hand too? Were you going in a different direction?
No, I did Selma, and obviously Jake's choice is great as well.
Yeah, I also love Selma. Like, there's not to take away from Selma.
No, not at all. I mean, Selma is just it was just powerful is the word I would use for it. And David Oyelowo just really embodied. I mean, it was an unbelievable performance. And that movie was a big moment. It was a big deal, and a lot of people saw it, and a lot of people were affected by it. And what I loved about that movie was how differently people viewed it, depending on your life experience, whether or not you lived through certain time periods or not. Everybody came at that film from their own life experience or what they perceived that story to be. And to me, that's fascinating.
How we perceived that man.
Right. That's the fascinating thing about cinema is we come at these films and these stories, and they really can dig you into a deeper dive into someone's life. We've all learned about Martin Luther King Jr. over the years and in school and everything that we do in terms of like entertainment and media and whatever, and any type of movies or shows but when you see a film that is dedicated really to personalizing him in a way that I hadn't seen prior. And again, we've seen films and obviously know a lot about the man in the history books, but there was something that Ava did with this story that kind of really opened it up for me in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And it wasn't that I already very much appreciated and knew about the story and the history. I just feel like the movie kind of gave me an emotional edge to it that I may not have found without Ava's voice. And it's not that she taught me anything new. It was that she gave me a viewpoint into a feeling, an emotional connection to someone that I had read in history. But to see it brought to screen the way Ava did was particularly special. It was a big movie. It was a big moment. It was culturally extremely important, and I'm just happy that the movie exists. And I think that's obviously that's a legacy film for her. That's a film that will always be with her and mentioned with her. So
for sure, yeah. I mean, that's exactly why I picked it as well too, Kevin. In that it's a genre of film that I don't necessarily love because the standard examples of them either feel like Hollywood in other people's hands. Well, either it's so dry that it feels like homework, right? And you're kind of trudging through it, or it has that glimmer, that sheen of artificiality that comes with, Hollywood. And you can see, oh, this is fill in the blank famous person trying to be a historical figure.
Yeah. And win an Oscar.
So David Oyelowo was just, he was such a revelation, in that part. He was him. But also, and it's interesting that Jake picked a documentary because I think it speaks to the way Ava
when they say this isn't a
documentary filmmakers. Oh, it's not? Oh, no. I thought that. What was she did the 13? The
13th? Yeah, she did 13th. But when they see us, is something different?
An actual show.
Yeah, it's an actual. Yeah.
But I think she has an eye for that sort of realism that comes with documentary storytelling. And I thought, like with Selma, I honestly felt like we were standing in the place at the time. Like she opened up that door that way. And that's what I think Kevin was getting at in that, it's not that it was teaching you different things, but it approached it in a way that is very unique to her.
You were living in it.
Almost. But I don't know why she doesn't. I wish she was a little bit more like, I wish she had more films. I'm not quite sure. Maybe she's producing a lot.
I think she produces. I think she to quote Jack Lemmon, I think she sends the elevator back down a lot. Like she's at a point in her career where I think she is now lifting up other voices that need to be heard.
Because I think she has such a unique voice, and I would love for her to keep going in it with additional features. But I had to pick Selma because I just remember being so blown away by how the movie played out and the announcement of David Oyelowo as a talent to pay attention to, because that's, like you said, one of the most difficult roles I would assume in to be able to try to pull off is Martin Luther King Jr. And he does it seamlessly.
What you said is exactly kind of what I was trying to say in all the words I said. It was like Sean put it perfectly, was just basically is you're sitting in what feels like documentary footage of Martin Luther King Jr. Like to a point where I think I figured out where you were going with that, because when you're watching the film, it's as if you are watching someone's real footage of these real moments. And it's not like it's like shot jarringly like a documentary, but like you almost feel like Ava has transported us to the time, to the moment, and you're sitting in it and you're watching found footage that has been unearthed after all these years. And you're there and David is him. And it's like, whoa, it's like I
want to watch it again. Cinema
really does, in a weird way, can help humanize people even more. And I say that because, like, when you think of Martin Luther King Jr., you that's a monumental person, right? Like, it's almost as if they're not even a human being. It's like they're so ingrained in our culture, like they're so big. But then when you have a person who plays them and grounds them and gives them that like real life, that real human experience, that's what Ava did.
And I also think, to a certain degree, sort of growing up seeing the same black and white footage of someone kind of puts this chasm between you and them, and to a certain degree a distance where it makes you forget that they're human beings, that they're people. And we have to remember that a lot of this stuff didn't happen as long ago as you think. It's that there was a post when Betty White passed away that that came up that basically was like, hey, just a reminder, like Martin Luther King, if he were still with us today, would be younger than Betty White. Like he should still be with us, and he's of an age where he should still be alive.
Sure.
And I think these movies kind of have the ability to sort of humanize them in a way that removes that chasm, that the same black and white footage that we see over and over again. Not that, I mean, it's good. We should have that. That's invaluable footage, but it's a reminder that like they're more than that clip that you saw in sixth grade over and over again.
For sure.
You forget they're a person. Yeah. You really do. You forget like that person was like a normal person who was just walking through life. It just happened to do these extraordinary things.
For next week, we're going to play hashtag Penny Marshall Blend. We're going to celebrate
cool.
the amazing films of the wonderful Penny Marshall. So make sure you get your choices into us either at ReelBlend@cinemablend.com or use the hashtag Penny Marshall Blend. Make sure to drop us a review on Apple Podcasts, and please leave us a rating on Spotify as well too. If you leave us a review, we will be able to read it right here. Our next premium episode, which we're going to record right after this, is the 1999 Oscars in Review. Controversial year, some interesting films that were up for debate at that time. And again, you can get access to this and all of our episodes of ReelBlend Premium at cinemablend.com/ReelBlend Premium. You can follow us online all during the week to find out some of the things that we are sharing at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, at Gabe Kovac, and at ReelBlend. Gabe, hope you're enjoying your time off. Sorry we wandered a little bit. Jeff, I hope you're still with us. No, it's
he's been screaming at us to rap for an hour.
Oppenheimer.
Hockey pads.
Oh my God.
QB.
Yes.